Hey guys. Okay, I just wanted to kind of like get things set up before 1 o'clock. So just wanted to get an idea. I'm making my bed, so I'm gonna just move this way. So you can't see my bed in the background. Oh, see, this is back. There, I think now you guys can see him. Yeah, St. Joseph's back there. All right, let's see. I'm going to put the chat in front of me so I don't even need to see the screen. Let's see. So anyway, hello everybody. I guess I should treat this like a video in case, because I know it's gonna be a recap. Or hey Cami. So hey guys, so what I wanted to do was just do this live because I think it's worth a discussion. But I'm going to be reading a lot from this book, Trustful Surrender to Divine Providence, because first of all, it's full of scripture, and I think the way people are being so fearful of the coronavirus makes me think that there is a lack of understanding of divine providence, that everything that happens to us is willed by God. And if that's like, whoa, that's not my image of God, then you may perhaps have an image of God that's not fully accurate. Because as you know, God is willing right now for us all to be here, for us to have eyesight, breath, the trees grow, everything is being willed actively by God. And so, and the Bible says this. And so to think that this is just God's passive will and that he didn't will the coronavirus is an inaccurate way of looking at God. And, but as Romans 8:28 says, which I don't have memorized, I try to memorize it, but anyway, Romans 8:28, something along the lines of, all things work for good for those who love him. And so this book talks exactly about that. Hey, everybody. I'm so excited that, wow, there's already 28 people here. That's awesome. Yeah, Daniel, God wills everything. So, and he even, you could argue, wills that Mass has been canceled, which is a little bit beyond the pay grade and to try to explain the humanity part of this. So we're going to stay with the bigger picture stuff. We can kind of like dive into, God willing certain things, but of course he doesn't will sin, right? So anyway, so what I want to do is start by reading a couple of sections of this book, and then we can start having a dialogue back and forth on what we think about what has been read. So it says on page 6, if you have your book, God controls all events, whether good or bad. And so there's a bunch of quotes here from the Bible. So I'm just going to cite them and read to you. So he's talking to us, Isaiah right now. I am the Lord, he tells us himself by the mouth of the prophet Isaiah. And there is none else. I form light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And then in Deuteronomy, it says, it is I who bring both death and life. I who inflict wounds and heal them, he said to Moses. The Lord killeth and maketh alive is written in the Canticle of Anna, the mother of Samuel. So this is now we're in Kings? No, yeah. He bringeth down to the tomb and he bringeth back again. The Lord maketh poor and maketh rich. He humbleth and he exalteth. And then in Amos, it says, shall there be evil, disaster, affliction in a city which the Lord hath not done, asked the prophet Amos. And then Solomon in Ecclesiastes says, good things and evil, life and death, poverty and riches are from God. So that's just some of the kind of basic, biblical quotes that kind of confirm the fact that God's hand is in everything, the good and what we consider the bad. But, everything works towards good. And so, so there's that. So, okay, let me stop and let me see what your guys are talking about. Yeah, Father Rocco. Someone mentioned that. I wasn't able to look up Father Rocco. There's a lot of quotes in here from St. Augustine and St. Blaise and St. Gregory. I'm glad 22 vanilla latte. I'm glad is for sanctification, right? We're in exile here. This is our trial. This is our race, as St. Paul would say. And so God's going to give us different things he feels we need to have in order to, different events, and things like that, in order to draw us to who we are meant to be so that we can cooperate with God's will. I love St. Louis de Montfort. Yeah. And, oh, Father Rocco's alive. Oh. Yeah. Eucharistic processions. I read somewhere that is like what we should be doing right now. I don't know whether it's right or wrong that Mass has been stopped. I asked my priest. Oh, can you guys still hear me? It says my connection is unstable. Let me know if you can still hear me. Yeah, YouTube buffering. Okay. Is it better now? Is it better? Oh, St. Roch. See, okay. Someone mentioned St. Roch. Okay, you guys good now? Okay. Okay, cool. So that's too bad it's buffering. I can't. I'm on my laptop. Okay, cool. So where was I going? Anyway, later on in this book, I'm cutting out still. Okay. So ultimately, and I'm not going to be surprised if it cuts out but what am I trying to say? Ultimately, God is going to give us the strength to get through whatever he gives us, right? Because he loves us so much. So it's one thing to say, okay, this is divine providence. God's giving us, whether we get ill, whether a loved one gets ill, whether someone dies, whether the store's out of toilet paper, whatever it is, right? Whether we are told we can't attend Mass, we can't receive the Eucharist, whether we have to receive in the hand, which thankfully I'm not there yet, but may come. The Holy Water's gone. Maybe we have to still, when we cooperate and we accept it. Does that make sense? Like, we must accept what is happening and ask God to show us where we fit in with it, but not to rail against it, not to complain, not to say, this isn't what I wanted to have happen, this is right, because God is all good and all knowing and all wise. So to say that we know better than God is completely like incorrect and wrong. Oh, talking to my priest. Thanks, Haley, or Hallie, sorry. Hallie, right? So I was talking to my priest and I was like, I'm really confused about like divine providence and shutting down Mass, and is that right? And he said that it doesn't really matter whether canceling Mass is right or wrong. That's something that the bishops are going to have to answer for, whether it was right or wrong. But yet we have something called holy obedience. And so it's our job in that humility to accept whatever it is our archbishops pass down. So thankfully, so far, I'm still allowed to receive communion on the tongue. It's discouraged, but it's allowed. And so I continue to do it. And it's one of those things where I go back and forth because I don't want to be like causing somebody else to possibly, become ill or to be uncomfortable. And my priest kind of like threw the host in my mouth the other day. And I was like, oh no, I must have made him uncomfortable by asking to receive on the tongue. But yet it's still allowed. And so there's that. But if I was told like I could only receive coronavirus, it's okay. One thing that's really interesting is the coronavirus hit during Lent, right? For the majority of Lent, this is like the big thing. At first it was in China. And I know they have the same holy seasons as we do, and the Catholic Church is there. But now it's really come to pass and we're in Lent. And even Father Mark Goring in that video I put up there talks about how so interesting this is and how if you can't attend Mass and life is kind of shutting down as we know it, perhaps that's because we need to find God in the peace. We need to like step back from the busy. And if your Mass is canceled, don't use it to like spend more time watching a TV show. Like really hone in on the prayer life that you can have here at home. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, let's see. I'm like not reading everything because I'm talking. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I just don't know. It's hard to stay calm, like amid. Hi, Steven. I don't know why this is not going through. Okay. Is there really a Saint Corona? Are you being serious right now? Because Gretchen, because that's kind of interesting. Okay, Hallie. So they can't. So some people have said that their church did say they are not allowed to recite in the tongue. What I think is interesting is my archbishop has said it's highly discouraged, except in the extraordinary form of the Mass. And I'm like, no, sorry, it's unstable again. I would say that the devil does this, but we don't ever blame the devil for anything because because the devil is just a mere creature. I want to read that part to you guys because I don't want you to ever say this is the devil's work. And I think that it's really easy when we start kind of getting into our faith walk that we can blame the devil for things, right? So let me find it. To men or to other causes happens to us only by the will of God, by the disposal of providence, by his orders and under his guidance. And if from the frailty of our understanding we cannot grasp the reason for some event, let us attribute it to divine providence, show him respect by accepting it from his hand, believe firmly that he does not send it to us without cause. And I love that St. Paul says, for in him, okay, I'm not going to find it. You know, I don't know if it's end times or not. Someone said Our Lady of Korea, I think it was, talked about how there's going to be an increase in plagues and things like that, right? Fiona, right. It could be beginning times. We just ended the 100-year reign of Satan, right? So that was like 19. Was it Akita? Okay. So someone said Korea. Maybe I just heard it wrong. Akita makes more sense. So, but we just ended the 100-year reign of Satan from 1917 to 2017. And so you can look at what happened in those 100 years and be like, wow, it got really bad, right? But the church was not destroyed. Yes, some things happened that you could argue were not ideal, but now you see the swing back. You know, like our generation is swinging back, and even people older who are like have kind of had like these aha moments are swinging back towards reverence. You know, and you see the extraordinary form of the Mass being offered more and more. The churches that hold Latin Masses are full. I don't know why all churches haven't figured this out yet, but you know, no, it probably is Akita. I didn't hear Korea either. So anyway, I think that we are in a renewal of the church with all the scandals and all the things that happened in the last 100 years. Like, I just think that, except for Fulton Sheen, because he's amazing. And of course, there's always saints, even in times of like the church not being ideal, like Mother Angelica and things. So it's just, but there is, it seems like this swing the other way. I think, Hannah, it depends because there are very, very devout 20-year-olds. I mean, it just depends on how young you're talking about and where their parents are in their faith walk and what they've been exposed to. Does that make sense? Right. And Aaron, right. Like, there's been plagues as chastisements. And, you know, people don't like when you say this tornado, you know, was an act of God, but of course it was. Who else is causing the tornado but God himself? Like, the tornado can't exist without God willing it. So whether it's like meant to punish one person or if it's just meant to be a tornado, I don't know, because I'm not God. But what are we talking about now? Okay, I'm gonna stop. That's good, Cami. But Cami, are you arguing that then that we should be blaming the devil, or are you talking about something else? Yeah, I mean, some churches, the community just weather warfare. No, I have not heard of weather warfare. I don't know what that is. Okay, so I think with our free will, we can open ourselves up to evil, and it's sin we fight and not the people themselves. Does that make sense? So I think, so for us all to hide from each other sounds so wrong. So I'm still going to go to Mass tomorrow, and I'm going to take my kids. And so when you study divine providence, the thing is if God is going to have you get sick, he's going to have you get sick. And if God's not going to have you get sick, he's not going to have you get sick. And so, yes, we should use caution because we have the knowledge of the way germs work and things like that. But I also trust God immensely. And I don't know. I think that's a personal call. If you don't want to go to mass, that's your call. And if your church is just, giving you dispensation, you can. But 365 times in the Bible, it says, do not fear. So if you're staying home out of a sense of fear, I get, if you think that it's an act of charity to stay home, obviously, I think that the vulnerable need to stay home. Prudence. But there are people who get lung cancer who've never smoked a day in their life. And there's people that smoke every day of their life and never get lung cancer. The only way you can attribute that is by God's will. Aaron, I agree. I just think that I wish instead of closing masses, they were just giving the dispensation. And then, why are they blocking you, Stephen? I don't know why they keep blocking you. Maybe because you're adding emojis. But I just think Jesus Christ, I will link videos to this talk down below, a bunch of videos I'm watching lately. And I just think Jesus Christ died for our sins. And if we believe truly that Jesus Christ was present at the Mass and he literally is standing there, then why wouldn't we go to him for healing? Right? I agree. I just think that I wish every single Mass was open right now, that every single door of every church was unlocked, and that Mass was being held multiple times a day. I think there is an interesting way the church could handle this, that instead of shutting things down, they could have gone the other way and said, we have true presence and we have the Eucharist and we're going to have adoration, 24-hour adoration, for the rest of Lent or whatever it is. But again, I understand it's a contagious disease and people are getting sick. So I don't know the right answer is, but I just know that I'm still going to seek the sacraments as long as I can. If that makes sense. That's just where I'm at with it. Let's see. Right, Aaron, see, that's where I'm at too. If you go to Mass or stay home, God's in control of who actually gets sick. Like with St. Damien going and taking care of the lepers for 14 years before he got ill, and all the other people over the course of history who have tended the sick. It's when they finally do contract the disease, or maybe if they never do, that's God's will. And so it's not frailty to battle, but truly, does that make sense? Let's see. What else are we talking about here? You guys are chatty. Right. Philomena. Is that how to say Philomena? I agree that we don't know why is this happening, but we should be using it to cooperate with God's will and to find out what it means for our life specifically. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Oh, okay. So let me read you this section. Oh my goodness. My computer's been crazy. Let me read you another section. In public calamity, what you could argue is going on right now. We ought to conform to God's will in all public calamities, such as war, famine, and pestilence, and revere and adore his judgments with deep humility, in the firm belief that, however severe they may seem, the God of infinite goodness would not send such disasters unless some great good were to result from them. What may appear a scourge and punishment is often a sign of great grace and mercy. You have to remember, right, that the very hairs on our head are numbered. So God is he loves us, and he would just never, ever send something to us that we did not have the ability to handle. And as long as we are cooperating, as long as we're not turning from him, then we will always be given the grace to handle whatever hardships. Like, I have stuff going on in my personal life that I'm unfortunately not able to share with you guys right now, hopefully soon. And God's been just so very good to give me the grace to handle it. And whereas people who are outside of that, right, will say, I can't believe you're going through that. I couldn't do what you're doing. I don't know how you're so strong. And it's like, because God gives us that grace. If you get ill, if you are able to say, God, thank you for this illness. Show me how to move through this illness in a way that brings me closer to you, then God will give you that strength. So I'm going to jump to page 58, where it talks about in sickness and infirmity, because some of us might get sick, right? And even if it's not the whatever we're calling this, the coronavirus, it could be the flu. I got the flu this year. I got sick multiple times, all over Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year. I was sick like the whole time. And I was able to be like, okay, God, thanks for this. I'm just going to slow down. And like with mass being canceled, slow down, right? Just don't think of it as, and I don't think any of you would be like, oh, good, something less, something I don't have, an obligation I don't have to fulfill. Now I just don't have to check a box. But I don't think any of you are in that state of mind. But yeah. So here we go. It says, we ought to conform to the will of God in sickness and infirmity and wish for whatever he sends us, which, right? That's hard. I'm like wishing for this, right? Both at the time it comes and for the time it lasts, and with all the circumstances attending it, without wishing for one of them to be changed. That's hard, right? And at the same time, do all that is reasonable in our power to get well again, because God wishes it so. For my part, says St. Alphonsus, I call illness the touchstone of the Spirit, for it is then that the true virtue of a man is discovered. And then there's a really beautiful story here about, oh my goodness, where is it? It was Saint, I thought it was Saint, okay, so Saint Bonaventure, Saint Francis of Assisi, okay? So, so Saint Francis of Assisi was afflicted by an illness that caused him great pain. One of his followers said to him, ask our Lord to treat you a little more gently, for it seems to me he lays his hand too heavily upon you. Hearing this, the saint gave a cry and addressed the man in these words, if I did not think that what you have just said comes from the simplicity of your heart without any evil intention, I would have no more to do with you, because you have been so rash as to find fault with what God does to me. Then, though he was very weak from the length and violence of his illness, he threw himself down from the rough bed he was lying on, at the risk of breaking his bones, and kissing the floor of his cell, said, I thank you, O Lord, for all the sufferings you send me. I beg you to send me 100 times more if you think it right. I shall rejoice if it pleases you to afflict me without sparing me in any way, for the accomplishment of your holy will is my greatest consolation. This whole book is full of saint quotes and Bible quotes. And then just a couple, it's so good, because if you're ill and you read that, you're just like, okay, like, I'm just going to release this cross, right? I'm just going to lay it at the foot of Jesus' cross and say, God, whatever your will is, because we're guaranteed suffering, first of all, because Jesus suffered, right? He didn't suffer, then we'd be like, oh, okay, we're supposed to suffer. But he, the scourgings and like the pestilence and the plagues, but we know that the Old Testament God, the New Testament God are the same God, and that you have to really just kind of weave them together, because there's justice and there's mercy. And even Jesus Christ, like, lovingly said, God, Father, take this cup from me, but not your will, but my will be done. And so we just have to look to Jesus, because he's our true example of how we approach any kind of hardship. Hi, Karen. All right, guys, this book is amazing. There's also a really good part on death. And like, it's funny because let me read this one. Okay, I have this highlighted, so hold on. Let's see what it says on page 60. It would show very little appreciation of God to venture to think that he who is wisdom itself and loves us with the infinite love that would load our backs with too heavy a burden, or leave us longer than necessary in the fire of tribulation. So again, God is not going to give us more than what we can handle. He's just not. So that's where that really true trust in God comes from, because if we think, if you have my friend has 6 kids and she got very ill and her husband was gone. And it was like, in that moment, it's just like, ow, this really hurts. This is hard. But yet God did not give her more than she could handle. In the moments, it can feel like that. But that's when we don't despair. I love this in the Heart of Humility book. It talks about how God, if you ask him, will show you like how little you are, but he will never take you to a point where you would despair and become hopeless. And so he'll show you your humility, but he would never show you like your true humility, because like how truly, just from dust you are, and just, all that, because he loves us too much. Like that's the thing. We can't forget God is love. And so, it's like, well, how is it loving me when say you have a family member and they pass away, and it was like, how is that loving me, God? But it is. And if you can say, okay, well, God, your will be done in those really hard moments. Oh, that is just the goal for all of us. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that when you get there to this level of trust, it's completely peace-giving. And they say that you're a saint when things don't rock your boat. Like something really wonderful can happen and something really tragic can happen. And you can feel the sorrow. Like sorrow is okay, but fear is not. So it's like you can feel sorrow, but yet you still are at peace. And that's they say that's when you're truly like in this place of trust. I don't know that story, Gerard. Did I say it? Sorry, I'm like terrible with names. No, I wouldn't say that, Aaron. So so let me read you the part about, make sure you thumbs up. Let me read the little part about the devil, because you guys seem to be a little fixated on that. And like, there is spiritual warfare, but again, remember that the devil is a creature and God's willing him to exist. Okay. He's not on equal footing ground with the devil. With God. Okay, so let's find it. You think I would have it highlighted, but I almost feel like I don't. Let's see. And I'll be like, oh, I feel so much better now. All right, we're just gonna take a minute. I meant to highlight this part, but no, it's earlier. I think it's earlier in the book. It's like earlier. Hold up. Sorry. Just keep talking to yourselves. Because sworn it was on this side of the book. I'm gonna like lose all my viewers now because like I'm just sitting here looking at a book. Here we go. We mentioned devil. Let's see what this says here. Okay, page 19, guys. So let us never let's start. I'll start on page 18 and read you like the part about Jesus and the Passion. Let us now listen to our Savior himself, who came down from heaven to teach us by his word and example. In an excess of zeal, Peter tries to turn him aside from his purpose of submitting to his passion and prevent the soldiers laying their hands on him. But Jesus said to him, "Shall I not drink the cup that my Father has given me?" In fact, he attributed the suffering and ignominy of his passion not to the Jews who accused him, not to Judas who betrayed him, nor to Pilate who condemned him, nor to the soldiers whom ill-treated and crucified him, nor to the devil who incited them all, though they were the immediate causes of his suffering, but to God, and to God not considered as a strict judge, but as a loving, beloved Father. Let us never then attribute our losses, our disappointments, our afflictions, our humiliations to the devil or to men, but to God as their real source. To act otherwise, says St. Dorothy, would be to do the same as a dog who vents his anger on the stone, instead of putting the blame on the hand that threw it at him. So let us be careful not to say, so and so is the cause of my misfortune. Your misfortunes are the work not of this or that person, but of God. And what should give you reassurance is that God, the sovereign good, is guided in all his actions by his most profound wisdom for holy and supernatural purposes. So, is that it's like, yes, there's spiritual warfare, but you still have to understand that God uses the devil as a tool. And yes, we can open up. Like, we can mess with the occult, and our free will can open up the doors to the devil. And God will respect the fact that we opened up the doors and therefore allow the devil to do what he does best. But if we don't open those doors, so like the devil is the great accuser, right? And the other day I was having my mentoring with Kat, and I was talking about I was having some kind of issue with like thinking through the fact that I'm really bad at, that I feel really bad at housekeeping, that I'm just like really bad. I act like a teenager. I fling things around. I never put things away. And so like I never end up getting things like done the way I should do them. And I kept hearing these voices in my head. However, I was allowing that to happen. I was opening myself up by, instead of accepting myself as perfect as God made me and striving in virtue to overcome my laziness by, acts of fortitude and temperance in some ways, I was allowing the devil to whisper lies in my head. And God was allowing that as a way to teach me more about myself, to get me to this next level in my growth towards virtue. Does that make sense? I'm glad, Hannah. So the more we pray, the more we grow closer, and the more we kind of understand our task to grow in virtue and become perfect. I mean, God does call us to be perfect. And Father Ritberger is really good about being like, no, we don't just, we're all called to be saints, and we are all called to be perfect. And that's not like a perfectionism, which is my issue, but really a perfectness in terms of modeling after Our Lady, modeling after Jesus, and asking yourselves what Jesus would do or what Mary would do is really, really helpful. And so when it comes to going to Mass, as a sense, we go to Mass not for ourselves, right? We go to Mass because justice demands that we go to the sacrifice of the Lamb and we partake in that. We participate in Jesus being represented to the Father. That is all a sense of justice for our salvation. So if you have access to the Mass, it's one of those things would Mary stay home and hide, or would she go to Mass? Or would Jesus stay home, or is he don't you trust me? Does that make sense? Yeah. If your generation went through 9/11, we might not have survived. What do you mean by that, Harry? I mean, I was alive during 9/11. I'm 36. Padre Pio being beat up by the demons. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I would say God willed that, right? I'm not sure Padre Pio opened himself. I don't think Padre Pio welcomed that, but I do think that maybe that was a test by God. So I agree. We should not be panicking. All right. Google it. All right, let's see what else you guys are talking about. So, okay, so Aaron, with God willing the coronavirus, I think maybe it's it's one of those things where it's a test, right? It's a test to our faith. It's a test to what the bishops and the Pope are going to do. It's a test to what us as laity are going to do. And I think we each have to kind of come to, where it is, because like Hallie said, I think over in my community thread, we can't be superstitious about the body and blood of Christ, right? It still has corporal form. It still has the ability to carry germs and those kinds of things. But it's also God. So I think, when I look at the Mass, it's like, if I get sick from the Eucharist, then I get sick from the Eucharist. Of course, when hard things happen, it's like, wow. But, yeah. I mean, Anna, we could have failed the test, right? The church, like I said, I think the church could have handled it differently, but that's when we pray. This is not a time to criticize the church, criticize your archbishop, criticize your priests. This is not a time to criticize the Pope. This is a time to pray. Like, if the message is anything, it is pray the rosary every day, pray for our leaders. I still think that it'd be really cool if on Easter Sunday, the coronavirus just disappeared. Like, wouldn't that be amazing? God could do it. He raises people from the dead. He got rid of, the only reason he spit in somebody's eye spit on his fingers and touched someone's ear was just because humans need physical stuff. But he can do anything at any time completely. He could just wipe out all disease from this earth if he really wanted to. But again, when we have disease, then we have the ability to have heroes. And when we have the poor being always with us, it's not an economic statement from the Bible. Oh, the poor are always going to be with us because you guys are never going to be able to figure out utopia. No, it's because the poor serves as a reminder that this is not the end game. This is not our home. Because, man, if you're living on the streets or you're living in a little hut and you're eating only rice every day and dirty water, you're for sure, you can think, this is great. This is great. I could do this forever. And like in Braveheart, who wants to live forever? I mean, I love that song by Queen. But I just think the poor are always with us to remind us, this is not our home. Right. And Job is really really, but we should be, like Hallie says, we should be considering the immunodeficient. So saying that people who are immunodeficient will always be with us and need to be cared for. I mean, the church has always taught, if you are ill or you are, not, or if you are, deficient, if you're at risk for some reason, you are free from the obligation of attending Mass. And I'd hate to say Mass is just for the healthy, whatever of us. But at the same time, like Aaron said, then most of us, even if we get the coronavirus, will not die, statistically. And so if someone, like what Aaron was saying, we should be going to Mass. Not because then we're contracting it from each other and passing it around, but for this fact that those who aren't, whenever I go to Mass, I always think of the homebound because I feel so incredibly sad for them that they don't get to be there. And sometimes when I'm ill, I missed a lot of Mass during Advent, and I would cry. I would do daily Mass at home, Sunday Mass on the YouTube, and I would sit there and sob because I missed it so badly. And so when we go to Mass, we should have these people in our minds that, and pray for them and have that sense of charity while partaking in the sacrifice that they cannot partake in. I do. I think it's beautiful that there are processions going on. I think the power of the Eucharist cannot be downplayed, ever. Because God in his ascension said, I will always be with you, and that is what he meant. So, all right. What else do you guys want to talk about? Right, Aaron, that's beautiful. And my friend, yesterday she went to Mass in Denver. I don't think she's here. But she went to Mass right before it was in Colorado somewhere. Right? And she didn't know it was her last Eucharist for a while because they shut down Mass after she went to daily Mass. But she was like, wow, what if every single time we received the Holy Eucharist, we assumed it was going to be our last? Because we are not guaranteed this next breath. We are not guaranteed this next hour. And the coronavirus is not the only thing that can end our life. It's like the world kind of forgot that we're mortal. That's kind of what I feel like. It's like, do you guys realize that there's cancer and car accidents and natural disasters and, I don't know, childbirth, all the things? People pass away all the time. And it's not, I'm not trying to be callous, but one, they're going off, hopefully they're in a place where they're going to be with Christ or be cleansed in order to be with Christ. And so it's not, death is not a bad thing. It's just a change, right? And the people who are left behind is where it's like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. I miss that person. Right, Harry, I do agree with that too. I think open your windows, get outside, but we'll find out. We'll see. So let's see, 44 people. Everybody give this video a thumbs up if you like it. I mean, or if you don't like it, that's okay too. And if you disagree with me, go ahead and tell me. I won't be offended. I was really nervous doing this video because I'm like, I know not everyone agrees with me. I know not every Catholic agrees with divine providence in this way. And like I said, I didn't really understand what divine providence was until I read this little book. And but again, it's in the Bible. It's just, I think sometimes we can read the Bible and, you know, especially if you're kind of reading it like front to back, or you're reading like, I'm going to read a chapter a day. Sometimes certain points would jump out at you, just like I talked about my prayer journaling video. You know, scripture will jump out at you when you need it. And so with this book, it's just kind of like, oh, it's all right there. But yeah, I don't know. I used to kind of do the whole passive active will thing. Then it wasn't giving me as much peace because it was like, oh, God doesn't will the bad things. And it's like, well, you know, if he wills everything if the bad things aren't his will and they happen, then it's like, how do we explain that? But if we say God wills all things and he's all good and all things work good for those who love him. Sorry, I'm butchering Romans 8:28. But I think that when you get to that point, then you can just let's see. Thanks, Matthias. I'm really bad at names. So Matthias, thank you. I think hopefully that's right. Oh, Monica, I'm glad you're feeling better. I think it's really hard not to get scared. You know, I think we've all had those moments. Memento mori, yes. I think we've all had those moments where it is just like, it can kind of grasp us, like the anxiety. And you guys, in December, I was literally in counseling for being a hypochondriac. And I can't believe I'm sitting here today being like, I'm not afraid. So God can work quickly in you once you kind of like flip that switch. And it was like I was being a hypochondriac. And then I think by that point I was done being ill. But I don't know. I used to I had so much anxiety. And yeah. Does anyone else suffer from anxiety? God does not want you to have anxiety. But that's awesome, Karen. Like, that's where hopefully we all, what's tech guy? Oh, hey, from India. Is it 12:15 at night? It must be. Oh boy, that's late. All right, guys, let's see. What else are we talking about? All right, well, I have like 14 minutes left. So tell me if there's something specific you want to talk about, or we can go. Yeah. What are you emitting, Northern Light, that you have anxiety? You know, I think the anxiety is one of those crosses. Like, if everything's from God, then that means our anxiety is also from God. And I think that there is beauty in having anxiety and learning to overcome it not just through prayer. Like, I think if you need to go talk to somebody, go talk to somebody, because it's really helpful to talk to somebody. It's like amazing talking to somebody. I've had panic attacks too. So I'm not going there with Pope Francis, you guys. I'm just pray for the man. Okay. He's just a man. He's our Pope, and he's the head of our church, our physical head of our church, right? And Jesus is our spiritual head. And there is a lot of grace there. But if anything comes across that you're concerned about, just say a prayer for him. Thank you, Karen. Yes, you can do a spiritual communion. Does anyone know if you can do a spiritual communion if you're not confirmed yet? I almost want to say yes, because I feel like that's super appropriate to be like, I can't now receive you sacramentally, but please come into my soul spiritually. I feel like that's totally good. So my Catholic heartbeat, he can. I would think that you could. Like, the way the spiritual communion is worded sounds perfect. Yeah. So Matthias, yeah, say it. Northern Light, that's awesome. Jesus is amazing. And like, if he doesn't heal you, then that's because he's still working on your sanctification. So again, it's like, oh, Steve, that's a good question. How would Mother Teresa respond? Pretty sure she'd be at Mass, right? I just feel like Mother Teresa went into the streets of Calcutta. And it is one of those things where it's like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I avoid like the bad Walmart. And my friend is like, I don't, because like, if anything's going to happen to me, it's going to be God's will anyway. And it's just like, it's one of those things that, how much do we do out of a sense of fear? Like, oh, we must self-protect, versus remembering that our guardian angel is like right here. And everybody should say hi to their guardian angel right now, because your guardian angel's with you. And that's the other thing. Like, how can we fear if we have this huge, massive angel right here with these, like, I love the images of like the ripped abs and the huge wings and the sword, because that is like, we have that person, like that being with us right now. And he's looking at Jesus Christ and God the Father and the Holy Spirit. And he's like staring at them at the same time that he's sitting right next to me, like protecting me. Oh my gosh, so good. So good. I love our guardian angels. If you do not pray to your guardian angel every day, please start morning and night. Okay, I'm going to scroll up and look through. I mean, people are panicking. Let's see. I think it is really notable it's happening during Lent. I said that earlier on. I don't think my Catholic heartbeat, I don't think you were here yet. I was talking about how it's really interesting that this is happening during Lent. And I think what Father Mark said about, like, if your Mass is canceled, how instead of just like watching another television show, to really like hone in on prayer and acts of reparation. Someone talked about we could be fasting more. We could be making, different mortifications, taking those cold showers. I mean, I freeze all the time, but yeah, priests will be, there are priests that are giving last rites. There are priests that are still administering to the sick. I mean, if I was a priest, I'd be doing it, right? Oh, cool. I don't even know who Joy of the Faith is. That's cool. Yeah, Matthias, right? This is your first Lent, and it is. But again, like, it's all God's timing. I love the idea that God has placed us in this exact time frame for a reason. So, like, I just love that. Sometimes my husband would be like, I should have been in the 1950s. I'm like, nope, God put you exactly in this time for a reason. Last rites are like the same thing as the anointing of the sick, but it's like the my church on post. Oh man, it says it's unstable. Okay, are we good again? So yeah, and there's something called the apostolic blessing, which is, no, Karen, you have to live here, but you can live like you're in the 50s, right? We can be virtuous, and we can be modest, and we can like live in what we see as the ideal of the 50s. We can live that today, and we can skip out on all the things that, I mean, I would love to dress like I Love Lucy, like not her later stuff, but like her, like, man, I love those tailored outfits. And there are actually, there's a lot of things about the 50s that were bad. And if you watch Father Ripperger's video on the 6 generations of sin, not like the generational sin of like a family, but it's like the 6, I'll see if I can put it below. But he starts talking about like how each generation kind of failed the next generation. So, you know, it's just like right now we can, like our generation needs to be like, that's why I love that, like we're like the pro-life generation, and we're hopefully the generation that will end Roe versus, like overturn Roe versus Wade, and we can be the generation who stands up for the reverence in the Mass, and we can stand up for marriage, and we can stand up for not using contraception and not choosing abortions and all, you know, all the things, right? We can stand up for the ideals of the church's morality, what Jesus taught us, and like all the moral convictions that perhaps haven't been held up by past generations for whatever reason. So I would say like, so I feel kind of bad. So I did go out in a moment of panic and buy like some extra toilet paper and some extra flour and a couple of things like that. And thinking, I was thinking on it today, how I did that. And I'm reading this, you know, I'm reading my Trustful Surrender book, and I'm listening to my Trustful Surrender book and like prep for this. And I was like, I wonder if I should have done that or not, or if I should have just trusted God that, that if I needed toilet paper, he would give me toilet paper on the shelf, right? And so I don't plan on stocking up anymore. I was trying to do it in case, so like if I get ill, well, I don't know. I think there's some prudence to it, because if you get ill and the doctors say you have coronavirus, therefore I need you to self-isolate for 2 weeks, you're not gonna be able to go store in that moment, right? So, but I think anything beyond 2 weeks is not like trusting God. And there was another incident I was thinking of where God said, I do love the quote too, and I don't know where it is in the Bible, where he says, today has evil sufficient in itself, and so don't worry about tomorrow. So I feel like God really, and in Our Father, give us this day our daily bread. So while, you know, it's probably not prudent to like run to, or, you know, time effective to run to the store every single day, I think that stockpiling probably is something that is maybe not, you know, as trusting, I guess. Oh, 22 vanilla latte, you know what I'm talking about with that Father Ripperger video? That was really good. All right, what do we see here? Right. So Elvia, in relation to the Pope and about, you know, that he's going to have to answer to the Lord, I'll just tell you this, guys. I went to confession once, and what is going on with this conversation right now? Okay. I guess I did not see things that were said. So what I want to say is that, I lost it now. Never mind. Lost it. Someone remind me what I was saying. Thank you, MR. Yeah, Sermon on the Mount. Sermon on the Mount. I mean, you could spend your whole life just sitting on Sermon on the Mount. Okay. So I went to confession one time. And bye, Erin. Thanks. I'm almost done too, because my kids need some attention. But anyway, I was saying, you know, I was struggling with the Pope, right? Because I think as a traditional Catholic, some of the things that happen and like the whole Amazon synod and all those things, and it's just like, wow, like this is really, I don't know what to do right now, because like I can't, and sometimes like Dr. Taylor Marshall can get pretty critical. I don't like that. And so anyway, the priest said, look, we can pray for our Pope, and we hope that our Pope will be in heaven, and that's all we can do, right? So praying, and then hoping, and then not worrying. So, let's see. All right, guys. You know, Northern Light, the problem with some of the Catholics in the 60s is they kind of embrace something too. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're always in the desert, right? Like we are always a pilgrim people. We are always wanderers for a while there. And I mean, I still like it, but it's like, Hannah, I'm not going to go into it. Just, I mean, you can Google criticism of the Pope or something like that. But like I got into minimalism for a while, and you know, it's interesting because our generation is really mobile. And it's like people don't really buy homes and stay in them for 20 years anymore. And there's kind of like this searching, especially with minimalism. It's like people get rid of their stuff. And I think that's really valuable, and like not hang on to things that you don't need. Or bring you joy or whatever. But I just like, you know, as an army wife, I think that I've had like I let go of the whole white picket fence, 30-year house kind of thing. But I think that makes sense for us to be like having this longing and this mobility because we're just wandering in through the desert, right? So that's given me a lot of peace, like as an army wife that, all right. I'm looking. Oh, okay. So Hallie, I do agree with what you're saying. So I think that we each have different charisms. I'll go there. I'm not talking about the charismatic movement, but I'm talking about charisms, right? We each have different strengths. And so I do agree with you that some people are, like we each have like a calling, like the Holy Spirit will pull each of us in our own way. Some of us are called to like love and just are the most sweet, emotive people. And then others of us are called to like other gifts. And I think it's, bye, Jared. So, and I need to go too because it's been over an hour. But I do think that's true that sometimes people had different talents and that, you know, where things are needed. But I don't know. I guess I just get wary of complaining more than praying, I guess. That's, so like it's off-putting for me because even though I have criticisms, like I'm not the Pope, I'm not God, and would I like things to be different? Yeah, of course. I would love for all the altar rails to come back overnight, just like they took them out overnight, you know? But, yeah, I would love for a lot of things, but, you know, same, it's just like we have to, I just think, I'm not sure outwardly criticizing the Pope is proper. And I guess I guess that's the one thing I won't agree with, is I'm not sure, in my little prayer, my Pieta prayer book, it talks about, there's a quote in there that says you should never, ever criticize the Pope or priests, that you should just be praying for them. I know, I need to go because I'm on for an hour. My kids are running around. So you guys, God bless. I hope this was helpful. I really, 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 really can't recommend this book enough. I linked it down below, $7.99. It will give you so much peace. And yes, pray, hope, and don't worry. And, you know, we can do this again in a couple weeks if we need to or want to. But thanks so much for sticking around. Some of you stuck around for the whole hour. So God bless, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Can you go outside?
Sure.
Do you saw the